Good morning, students. I, Mrs. Ghosh, will take up English literature, the poem The Patriot, for class 10th. Read the poem with me, The Patriot by Robert Browning. It was roses, roses all the way, with myrtle mixed in my path like mad. The houses' roofs seemed to heave and sway. The church spires flamed such flags they had. A year ago on this very day. The air broke into a mist with bells. The old walls rocked with the crowd and cries. Had I said, good folk, mere noises repel, but give me your son from yonder skies. They had answered, and afterward what else? Alack, it was I who leaped at the sun, to give it my loving friends to keep. Not man could do. Have I left undone? And you see my harvest, what I reap? This very day, now a year is run. There's nobody on the housetops now, just a palsied few at the window said, for the best of the sigh is all allow. At the shambles gate, or better yet, by the very scaffold's foot I trow, I go in the rain and more than needs. A rope cuts both my wrists behind, and I think by the feel my forehead bleeds, for they fling whoever has a mind. Stones at me for my years' misdeeds. Thus I entered and thus I go. In triumph people have dropped down dead. Paid by the world, what dost thou owe? Me? God? Question. Now instead, it is God shall repay. I am safer so. Introduction of the poem. The poem The Patriot by Robert Browning is written in the form of dramatic monologue, where a man who is being led to the gallows is recounting his tale. The speaker recalls that exactly a year ago he had been led down this very street with crowd of people cheering him and scattering roses in his path. He was a hero being welcomed by his adoring fans. A year later, he has been tried, convicted, and is being led away to be put to death. The poet highlights the public adulation and memory are short, and praise and glory is short lived. A year ago, he was welcomed with glory and fame. Today, he is left with nothing but shame and death. This poem is a grim reminder that life is uncertain. The poem ends with a note of optimism. Browning's own philosophy that God is his heaven and all's right with the world is the note on which the poem ends. The patriot believes that it is God who will reward him accordingly to his true merit. The poem in the story of reward or punishment meted out to the speaker of the poem within 1 year for his services. The patriot who was welcomed with roses a year ago by the public is going to be executed like a criminal now. The poem is a satire on fickleness of the public opinion. Understanding the poem. The speaker of the poem, a patriot, received a grand reception from the public a year ago. His path was filled with roses and myrtle. The house roofs were crowded and the church spires were decorated with the crowd. The public admired and honored him to such an extent that if he asked for the sun, they would have agreed. The speaker regrets that it was he who did every possible thing for the public. In present, things have changed. He is being taken for his execution. There is nobody on the housetops now. He walks in the rain towards Shamble Gate with his wrist tied behind. Stones are being pelted at him. His forehead bleeds. The speaker accepts his fate. He feels more safe in the hands of God now. The poem in detail, stanza-wise explanation will be read out from the workbook, stanzas 1 to 6. The poem in detail, stanza 1. The speaker of the poem is a patriot who narrates the story of his golden past. He remembers a year ago, when he was given a grand welcome on his arrival to the town. People had thrown roses and myrtle in his path. The house roofs were so full of people that the roof seemed to sway. The church spires were decorated with beautiful flags. Thus, the speaker received a grand welcome a year ago on the same day. The second stanza is an extension of the first stanza. It tells us of the frenzy of the people at the arrival of the patriot. Bells rang to announce his coming. The old walls of the building seemed to shake with the crowd and their loud cries. They were momentarily swayed by him to such an extent that even if he had asked for the sun, they would have offered him the same. The speaker now regrets that it was he who leaped at the sun for his loving friends. It was the speaker who went ahead to do everything in public's best interest. The speaker now feels dejected at his harvest. Everything has changed for him in a year. Stanza 4 recalls speaker's present thoughts. The patriot is being taken to scaffold for his year's misdeed. There is nobody on the housetop now except a few suffering from palsy. Everyone knows that today the best of the sight is at the shambles gate or by the scaffold's foot. The speaker is now moving in the rain towards the end. His wrist gets cut by the rope used to tie his hands behind. The public that once regarded him with great respect now throws stones at him. His forehead bleeds, which is the punishment for a year's misdoing. Stanza 6, the poem ends quite optimistically. He has entered the gates of death and now is ready to go to his life after death. The speaker has resigned himself to his fate. He believes that in victory people drop down dead, but his imperfection will bring him closer to God. The patriot hopes that since he did not receive the reward in this world, he will be rewarded in the other world. He feels safe in the hands of God. It reflects Browning's optimism philosophy of life. Themes of the poem: public's fickleness, rise and fall of glory, faith in God. The poem portrays that how love, respect, and honor given to someone is momentary and it can change. A patriot was acknowledged as God-like figure by the public. A year ago, he was given a hero's welcome on his arrival in the town. At present, he has been taken to the scaffolds to be executed. The same public who threw roses and myrtle on his way a year ago now makes him bleed by throwing stones at him. The poem depicts the theme of sudden rise and fall of glory of man. 1 year ago, he was welcomed by the public with roses and myrtles. The same public hurled stones at him after a year. This act shows his downfall from a beloved hero to a condemned traitor. Browning's message in the poem is one of faith in God and optimism. The patriot feels that he carried out everything he could. The poem ends the line, "It is God shall repay, I am safer so." Even though the world think that the patriot has done something wrong, he knows he has done everything he could. Death is not the end. The patriot hoped that since he did not receive the reward from the he had done in the world, he will be rewarded by God. The poem reflects Browning's faith in God. God is in his heaven and all is well with the world. More about the poem. The Patriot is a dramatic monologue. In a dramatic monologue, a single person who is not the poet utters the speech in a specific situation that makes up the whole of the poem. The use of roses in the first stanza symbolizes people's love and affection towards the patriot. The reader tends to sympathize with him. The end of the poem suggests that the speaker has now accepted his fate and knows that he has to answer to God, not the fickle-minded public. He feels safer with God rather than with the public. His innocence is reflected by the poet. Assignment. Do the reference to context extract 1, 2, and 3 in the workbook. Write down the notes neatly in your register. Glory and power have been symbolized by the sun. He asks the people for the sun as it is ultimate symbol of power. The rain is symbol of a number of things. The patriot gets wet by the rain, losing his dignity. The rain washes him clean, representing his innocence. The poem never tells us if the patriot is innocent or if his execution is fair. Though the poem never tells us the reason for the patriot's execution,